Chapter 40. The alarm for the detonation sequence of this wing had begun. This foyer was going to be floating down toward Earth's surface and exploding into flame in less than 1 minute. The Time Lord was smiling as he formulated his plan. "Deep breaths, everyone!" A moment later, and Mr. Blue was being reeled, along with Sully and 2 stranded kids, by his temporal wrist device. Up, 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 slowly at first, but after a second or two, they were going faster, incredibly fast. Dawn watched the floor they had all been walking on several minutes ago, now vertical, as it sped by. There went her gum, Pete's empty soda can. When they reached the junction where the foyer split, the group had picked up enough speed that they floated in the air for a split second. The Time Lord adjusted, fired a small gravity burst, the force of which was enough to push all of them away from the edge as they hovered over and onto the horizontal lobby floor nearby. "Son of a bitch!" Dawn shouted. "Yeah!" Pete was laughing. "That was awesome!" Sully picked himself and the young boy up as Mr. Blue made sure Dawn was all right. The retired Commodore addressed him. "Not that I need to ask, but you're fine?" The Time Lord in the cobalt suit nodded as he ran his fingers over his platinum blonde gladiator cut. Mr. Blue was searching for something. His eyes were pure neon azure now, no hint of white. At all. Spooky. Sully never understood this strange trait of Mr. Blue, or whether it meant the Time Lord was angry or happy or whatever, but it usually meant something. The retired Commodore followed Mr. Blue as the children excitedly babbled to each other. But Pete yelped when the strange traveler in the cobalt suit punched a hole in the wall, followed by another. "What are you doing?" Sully shouted. Yet another hole. Mr. Blue looked like he was furious, punching holes in walls, then stopping immediately to work on some kind of scan. "Does he have bipolar disorder?" Dawn asked. "Because I've read—" "Mr. Blue," Sully ordered, "you're frightening the children." "Apologies," came the reply. "And you're frightening the old man. Now tell me what you're doing." "It appears," the Time Lord said, "that the rapids disappeared into the superstructure where they have overwritten the comm systems, perhaps to send for help." He punched another hole, scanned the interior. "I'm tracing them, from their residuals. Getting a look. I'm going to find them, drag them back here, and make them speak to me, to resolve the situation." "You actually think that'll work?" Since it's the only plan I've got." The Time Lord adjusted his lapis tie. "Probably." "Bloody hell, man. I really wanted a yes for once." Crewman Miskovich readied herself for an emergency departure. As she stared at herself in the mirror, psyching herself up, she couldn't help but notice the horrible purple bruises under her eyes. She was aware that some considered her moderately attractive. However, she would never win a beauty contest. But, come on. Had someone punched her in the face while she was asleep? Oh, right. She hadn't slept. That's why she had the bruises. She was supposed to be sleeping right now. As she grumbled to herself, the pilot also committed to memory all the facts she was aware of, all the facts given to her by her superior, Pierre Gonzalez, in the rushed, pre-recorded message which he woke her. 1. As of 2300 last night, at the Midpoint Hotel, while under quarantine, still somehow managed to have 2 unidentified persons not only break through the quarantine, but also hijack the infrastructure and communication grids. 2. As of 2315, per standard quarantine procedures, the meta platform was dropped and the umbilicious sealed. 3. As of 2330, Pierre Gonzalez, head of communications and military liaison, was forced to remain in the comm center after establishing brief contact with the 2 mentioned intruders. 4. As of 2345, fully 33% of the Midpoint Hotel has just been jettisoned. This could be a direct action of the Rapids. It could be something else. The cause for this is currently unknown. 5. As of 2400, whatever remains of the Midpoint Hotel will be imploded. The remains then to be jettisoned and the Rapids self-destruct sequence to be initiated. The surprising facts of this disturbing development were alarming. For instance, Miscavige thought the fact that Gonzalez has no idea whom or what has set off the detonation sequence, as it is not scheduled until North American Independence Day 4 days from today, on July 4th, 2367. One of the immediate questions, the most terrifying one, is who has control of the Rapids? Miscavige shook her head and grimaced at the thought of some lunatic or psychopath being able to instantly destroy any infrastructure or building on a whim. Or, and this was perhaps the worst, create literally anything. The crewman finished checking her high atmos flight gear, then placed on her helmet as she exited her quarters. Miscavige was escorted to her emergency shuttle by 2 military specialists, whom were also debriefing her on the things she already knew and had committed to memory. Yes, I know. Miscavige sat in the cockpit and fired up the engines. I will give you all a detailed report. She rudely slammed the lid on the 2 corporals in mid-sentence. She watched the pair step away from the clearance circle and head back to the Flight Operations Center. It was still dark. Overhead, the beauty and majesty of the heavenly black, galaxy-laden sky awaited Miscavige. She looked above, to her left, and far, far up in the dark heavens. She could barely see the hotel. Drifting away from it was a long, cylindrical hulk of metal that was on fire and disintegrating in the atmosphere. Fine morning, she said. Repeat, came the intercom. The crewman picked it up. Nothing. All clear? See what the hell is happening up there for me, will you? It was Pierre Gonzalez on the device. Miscavige watched the overnight deck crew of about a dozen flymen clear out. One stood in the far distance, giving her the semaphore signal. Sure thing, boss. The powerful engines exploded into life, and Miscavige blasted up from the ground, soaring into the star-filled night sky toward the midpoint. Got ya, dog's bollocks! The Time Lord jumped up and down 3 times. Is that good? Pete asked. Yup, say, dog's bollocks is good, Sully explained to the young boy. Just plain bollocks is bad. Mr. Blue tentatively held a single copper wire between a forefinger and thumb as he scanned it with his time watch. I found it. I mean them. Those... whatever. The Rapids. I've a lock. So we can talk to them? Dawn was hopeful. Get them to not blow us up? So I can drag their asses back here and make them explain what in the 7 hells is going on. Sully nervously searched for his glasses, in his front pockets, and then his back pockets. He found them, as always, hanging on his chest from a necklace. He put them on, then realized he was looking for a cigarette, not his glasses. As he resumed his search, he looked sideways at Mr. Blue. Maybe being aggressive here isn't such a good idea. Mr. Blue shrugged with a smile. Good is always a matter of perspective, Sully. He typed on his wrist device as a copper wire he was holding in his left fingers turned green. A brief quiet fell as the kids and the retired Commodore stood, transfixed, staring at the stranger in the blue suit as he typed furiously on his temporal wrist device. Sending... The Time Lord spoke very quietly. The inverse echo waveform transducer. Are you making that up? Dawn whispered. Mr. Blue whispered in response. A little bit. Yeah, I only seem like I know everything. The immediate and unexpected blast of neon sapphire light that erupted from the time watch startled everyone, including Mr. Blue, the very alien that programmed it. Bright blue filled the dreary, dark corridors of the midpoint. The hotel was flooded, drowned in extraordinarily beautiful, if piercing, cerulean light. What's happening here? The Time Lord felt the need to shout as he explained, as if the bright light emitted from his temporal wrist device was loud. These arcs of light are saturating everything, every nook,
Every cranny. Notice how it's getting even brighter? Oh, you've all closed your eyes. So, I suppose not then. Well, there aren't any shadows anywhere now, and the arc-like particles are going to stick to any phased residuals or carbon life forms.
Suddenly the light show stopped. Everything was back to a darkened red glow. The midpoint lobby returned to emergency lighting, crimson shadows stretching into the blackness. All was as it was before, except for the bizarre silver and gray humanoid which stood in front of the group. Sully had stopped, mid-light, a cigarette dangling from his lips. Dawn and Pete stood with their mouths open, yet not uttering a sound. Mr. Blue regarded the strange, undulating, warping, and shimmering metallic figure which stared back at him.
So,
he tilted his head as he stared at the rapid.
Seems you want to cause a ruckus?